The reality in Jerusalem. In February 1918, Great Britain began implementing the Balfour Declaration, their commitment to creating a Jewish homeland in Palestine. A few months after the fall of Jerusalem, a Zionist delegation from London arrived in Cairo to begin preparing Palestine for Jewish colonization. With the Balfour Declaration coming to fruition, the British realized they had a problem. They were supposedly committed to the nationalistic goals of both the Jews and the Arabs. Yet, here they were about to implement a plan that took land from one set of allies and gave it to the other. In order to make this obvious contradiction make sense, the British needed the Zionists and the Arabs to come to an agreement. Back in London, thousands of miles away from the reality of the Middle East, most British politicians were confident they could make it work. Amongst them was Mark Sykes, who sincerely believed there was a way to get Jews, Arabs, and Armenians to work together against the Ottomans. But this hope was absurdly optimistic at best and complete idiocy at worst. Most Jews were not at war with the Ottomans. There was no historical animosity between Jews and Ottomans or Jews and Turks. Most Arabs still supported the Ottoman Empire. Only a small number had joined the so-called Arab Revolt, and most of those had been bribed. There was historical animosity between Armenians and the Ottoman Empire, but the Armenians did not care what happened in Palestine. Mark Sykes, Lloyd George, and the British Zionists in London were looking at the situation through rose-colored lenses. They gushed about how beneficial Jewish colonization would be for the Muslims of Palestine. They argued the technology and scientific know-how the Zionists brought from Europe would also improve the lives of Arab and Muslim Palestinians. They insisted there was a way for both groups to share Palestine and peacefully coexist. Those British who lived and worked in the Middle East knew this was all a fantasy. No amount of technology and wishful thinking could ever align the interests of Jewish Zionists, Muslim Arabs, and Christian Armenians. They could see the inevitable problems that would arise from taking land from one group of people and giving it to another. The British officials living in the Middle East were hesitant to implement the Balfour Declaration and warned the Zionists to move slowly with their colonization scheme. Chaim Weizmann, the president of the British Zionist movement, arrived in Cairo with the Zionist delegation. While in Cairo, he met with Prince Faisal Hussein, who was leading the forces of the Arab Revolt alongside T.E. Lawrence. Right from the beginning, Chaim Weizmann and Prince Faisal became close friends. Prince Faisal accepted Jewish control of Palestine since he expected to get Syria and Damascus. In fact, Faisal told Chaim Weizmann that he did not even consider Palestinians to be true Arabs, so they were outside his jurisdiction. Faisal's father, Sharif Hussein, was a different story. He fumed at the idea of handing Jerusalem to the Jews. This was not what he signed up for when he rebelled against the Ottomans. Instead of a kingdom encompassing the Arabian Peninsula, all he could reasonably expect was the Hijaz. Meanwhile, the Zionists were getting Palestine, and his son was evidently getting Syria. Sharif Hussein demanded the British honor their commitments and blasted them for turning his son against him. Needless to say, the British preferred to work with Prince Faisal. Prince Faisal was on the ground, fighting the Turks and leading the Arab revolt while his father was isolated in the Hejaz. Furthermore, Faisal was friends with T.E. Lawrence, who was becoming a global celebrity. The British left Sharif Hussein pouting in the Hejaz, which held no strategic importance for them anyway. They marginalized the old man, keeping him out of the loop and managing the Arab revolt through Prince Faisal and T.E. Lawrence. Prince Faisal knew about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. He knew it promised Syria to the French, but he was confident the British would reward his loyalty and compliance by giving it to him instead, or at least support him against the French claims. Prince Faisal trusted the British. After all, he was just as much their ally as France was.